Hi, this is Pete Lyons with Let's Play Salesforce, and tonight I've got something that's been highly requested for you guys, a certification prep video featuring Nick from Partner Alliances. I've known Nick for a number of years. He runs the Partner Summits. He is also, you know how they've got the little icons for who's posting the most frequently? If you hop over to the partner community, he's always in the top 5. Nick does a ton to enable partners to and customers as well to better move along their journey to learn and apply and implement Einstein analytics. So Nick, take it away.
All right, Pete, thank you very much. I appreciate your time and appreciate your audience time as well. So let me start my screen share. All right, wonderful. So the purpose of this presentation is to get people comfortable with the certification. Now, Einstein Analytics and Discovery has been around, got 6 years now. We started out with an accreditation that I worked with a number of people and created, very successful, had over 600 people accredited. We then finally came up with an official certification, and that was a lot of work done by a lot of people to finally get a real cert, and I think everybody applauded that. We now have nearly 2,200 individuals certified as of last week. So I am thrilled about that, and that continues to grow at a great pace, and we want to continue to grow that. So one of the main things that we look at when we drive certifications is we try to help our partners understand the structure of the cert, and not only the structure, but some helpful tips, some helpful study links, and really a better way to understand the overall structure of the exam so that you can study appropriately. So that's the purpose of this. And then please use this, because not only the recording is going to be critical, but the slides that I'll make sure Pete has in it has a number of slides that have the key study links that everyone should click on each of those links to study what's in there, because they're a critical portion of the exam. All right. So before we get into that, just a couple of quick things, right? This Fast Path webinar series is something that we do on a monthly basis live. We also have it recorded on the partner community, and I'm thrilled that Pete will have it on his channel as well. We've done this in a number of different ways. The quick version of this is about 30 minutes, which is I'm going to do today. But we have a longer version that are 3 separate webinars that are about 30 minutes each that'll go a little deeper, but it's really the same basic content. You'll have the recording and the slide decks here as well. And I just wanted to put some numbers on the bottom there to get people excited. As I mentioned, 2,100 people are certified today compared to, at the beginning of this fiscal year, just under 1,000. So we've already doubled our numbers within 5 months. So let's keep that momentum up as we continue with Einstein Analytics. The certification voucher program, something I started about a year ago. Now, the goal here is that in order for you to earn a free voucher and a free voucher to take the exam, you simply have to go through the training that we put together. Now, there's a lot of training we put together on the Partner Learning Camp. And if you haven't heard that term, that's a term, there's a link that is hanging off the partner community left-hand nav. You'll see that. And I think I have a slide that we'll talk about that in just a minute. All of the content's there. So all of the links to the trailheads, trailhead modules, the trailhead projects, the videos from Ziad, any other documentation that you may need, including a recording of this and a link to the voucher program is all there. Walk through that step by step. It'll take you a number of hours. I would say full on anywhere from 30 to 40 hours worth of work. But you can request your free voucher there while I still have vouchers. And hopefully I'll have vouchers for the next 2 to 3 months. The goal, the thing that I check, by the way, is for everyone to complete both Einstein super badges and be a valid partner within Salesforce. Those are the 2 big things I check. Okay, I mentioned earlier the Partner Learning Camp. This is relatively new. All of the training content now resides there. It's in production. Pretty much what you do on the lower left-hand link, you will see something you can click to go directly to this. But again, if you simply go to the partner community, everybody should be a member there. On the left-hand side, you will see a link called Partner Learning Camp. You'll click on that. You'll click on Get Started. And in the catalog search, you click Curriculum, and you simply type in Einstein Analytics. 4 curricula will be in there. Within those 4 curricula will be 11 courses, all of those 11 courses will start you off from scratch. You know nothing about Einstein Analytics, the first course, all the way to Cert Prep, which includes these videos and the voucher request form and the super badges as well. So it's a great way to get acclimated with not only Einstein Analytics and Discovery, but go out there and search. I've already added Einstein AI content out there, and other Salesforce products are out there as well. Okay, so let's get started. Certified. I want every single person certified out here. This is not only something that will benefit you in your career, but we continue to train our internal reps to make sure that if you're not listed as a certified individual, you shouldn't be leveraged or used or worked with in the community. So that's critical to understand. All right, we want every single person out there trained, and I'm going to go further to say everyone who has a sales and service cert should also be certified in Einstein Analytics. Please don't look at this product as a BI tool. Please look at this as an enabler to a sales and service type solution, right? When you're out there delivering great sales and service work that you're doing, and of course you can tack on Marketing Cloud and virtually anything else, you should be positioning and delivering Einstein Analytics dashboards really no different than you're delivering reports and dashboards content, right? Think of it from that perspective. So here's the link here if you want to get started. This will go and it'll show you the guide of the information, and of course the link to Web Assessor to take the exam, whether it be in person or online. Everybody's doing that online now. Much, much easier. All right, some high-level links. So first of all, there are no official prereqs. You do not need to be admin certified. You don't need to hold any other certification. You don't have to do the super badges, although you're crazy not to, and we'll talk more about that. But you don't need any official prereqs. The suggested prereqs would be all of the work that I've just mentioned earlier that's on the Partner Learning Camp. So all of the trail mixes, trailheads and modules and projects, the 2 super badges, absolutely. Let me be very clear. This is a complex cert. Just because you know business intelligence, just because you might know something about Salesforce, means really nothing about the knowledge that you need to pass the certification. So please take the time to go through the training and earn a free voucher if we have one left. The exam has 60 multiple choice questions. You have an hour and a half to complete that, 68% passing score. If you were to pay for it yourself, $200 US, and a retake, it's $100 US. And there's the registration link there. The exam is broken down into 6 sections. The first 5 sections are around Einstein Analytics. The last section is around Einstein Discovery. Okay, so it's very heavy on Einstein Analytics, but remember, Discovery leverages data sets. So that data layer, that first section of 24%, really weighs heavy on both the Einstein Analytics product and the Einstein Discovery product. So let's pay attention to that section specifically, but at least you see the breakdown that we'll talk about the data layer, a little bit about security and admin, then we're going to talk about designing and implementation of dashboards, and then finally we'll wrap up at store design of Discovery. Like every good certification that Trailhead comes out with, there's also a certification exam guide for Einstein Analytics and Discovery consultants. Please use that. It's a great document, probably 10 pages long, gives you some basic summary of kind of what we're talking about right here, but it's a great way to get acclimated. There are a couple sample questions in there, but nothing significant. There's some links in there that will help you as well, but it's just a great way to get acclimated with the exam. Okay, I mentioned earlier the super badges. Critical, critical, critical. And I'll tell you right now, if you do not get both of the 2 super badges done below, you are going to have an extremely tough time passing the exam. Even if you have experience delivering Einstein Analytics content. Okay, the concepts you'll be learning in the data prep specialist are critical. The understandings, the better understandings of insights are very, very important. So please take the time. Now I've added lightning experience reports and dashboards here. You do not need to have that. You do not need to complete that. It's not anything, but I've found that if people get used to, if you're used to reports and dashboards, you know what, start there, get used to a super badge and what it does, and then go into Einstein Analytics. All right, let's break down the overall exam. We talked about this earlier, 6 sections. The first 5 are analytics. The last one's discovery. We're going to go into each one. So the way I've structured this is for each of these subsections, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we're going to have some slideware that will talk about some of the highlights of what's going to be found in that section in the exam. And then the most important thing is the last slide of each section I've designed to be nothing more than study links. Every single person out there, if you're ready to take the exam, please click on those study links, study and read those links, most of which simply goes to the help within Salesforce to be able to zero in on the concepts that may be found on the exam. All right, so section 1, the largest section of the entire exam, right? Mainly because it fields both analytics and discovery. Of these, of this section, of 24% of the exam resides in this one section. The majority is around data manager, creating data sets, recipes, replication, sync, refreshes, all of that stuff. Okay, a lot of stuff, but hopefully some of the slides that we'll talk about in just a minute will zero in on that. So if you know very little about Einstein Analytics, you first need to know the components, right? A data set itself is a structure that you create. We easily create that, whether that be from an ETL tool you're pulling information from, Salesforce itself, via data flows or recipes, or simply uploading things like CSV files. Very simple to do. We create this data set. This data set is highly indexed, so it's very quick from a consumption standpoint, which makes analytics very, very easy to use, very fast to use, and the ability to jam billions of rows of information into a given data set. Now, all data does not have to reside in one data set. You can create multiple data sets. If you need to think about what a data set is, think about a data set as an Excel spreadsheet. Now, I'm dumbing this down, but let's be very basic about this. A data set is nothing more than columns and rows. Sure, you can have billions of rows, and sure, you can have numerous columns. So that's up to you what you want to put out there. But as you're designing the data set, and this is something that you're probably an IT person or a more technical person may need, if you're simply uploading data from a CSV file or some basic information, you don't need any technical help there. But if you're really starting to bring multiple data sources in and then leveraging the data flow and recipes to deliver that, there's something where you need a more technical person to design an appropriate data set. So understand the concept of data set is where you're going to query data from. How are you going to query that data? You leverage a lens. A lens is nothing more than a view into that data. It's a select statement, right? You're selecting columns from a data set with filters that you can build inside the lenses or on the dashboards, whatever you might be. So it's queries. You take those lenses along with controls and you drop them onto dashboards, right? You can have as many lenses, as many different data sets reference from those lenses, all on dashboards. And we'll talk a little bit more about dashboard design and implementation later. But understand that whole concept. All of this sits in a structural folder, nothing more than a folder, called an app. And that's really where you can apply some security. So from some terms, and the way I go through this presentation, I'm not going to go deep into any of these terms. If you listen to the high-level information that I go through, if you go through some of the help links that I'm going to share with you at the end of this, and you go through the training I put out there, including the super badges, you'll do pretty well on the exam. But be familiar with Data Set Builder, be familiar with data flows, recipes, what the differences are, why you would use one over the other, right? But in general, you're designing things, you're creating structures to, in the end, yield a data set. And that's really the difference between connecting information from outside of Salesforce into a data set, then you can push that information into lenses and dashboards and so on and so forth. So a data set, we've talked about this, right? How you can create a data set via CSV file, ETL tool, but also you can create it from Salesforce itself, right? Linking various objects together, really no different than reports and dashboards. If you think of it from that perspective, if you're a reports and dashboards pro, you already know most of this, most of the concept here, right? On the left-hand side, you see all of the objects and the fields for those objects. Well, imagine that same concept with creating a data set. you're really only doing one additional thing. Once you assemble how they should be joining appropriately and you're utilizing those appropriately, you'll simply telling the data set, create, all right? And the UI will allow you to build that. Now, you can do much more with that, right? As you're cleaning the data with recipes, you're going to be able to build some pretty cool stuff and really create some interesting data sets that are far beyond what you could do in reports and dashboards. So to sum it up, right, going from data sources, various data sources, you're going to bring into these data sets. But with sync and prep, what you're doing is you're taking the multiple data sets that you may have out there and squeezing them down into something that's much more useful for someone who's going to design an appropriate dashboard. Then from there, taking on those data sets, you're going to build apps. Remember we talked earlier that data sets and lenses and dashboards all fall into the structure called an app. And then, of course, the key is to link those apps to your users' actions, right? So actions to insights or insights to actions are really the most key things. So some of the basic terms you want to be familiar with: data sync and connect, understanding the concept of data sync and what that means. And I'm going to show you in a minute the links that I want you to read into to get deeper into the understanding there. Data flow editor, being to understand how to build data sets, how to structure data sets. Data prep and recipes, right? So prep your data so that when you get to the level of being able to select the information for lenses, you prep that data up front. Let Salesforce Einstein Analytics do that, so it'll be much easier for you to pull that information through. We've already understood the concept of a data set, and of course you can monitor all jobs you're running behind the scenes. Enabling data sync, very simple to do. I bring this up because on the exam there may be something around that, so understand how to enable data sync and what it does. The data set builder, right? How do I start building a data set, right? Create data set. It'll give you some information that you're going to be able to select. In this case, Salesforce information, you're going to pull that information across, and what you'll see is you'll be linking objects together. Some additional tips, I'll let you read that. I think one of the key things, make sure if you're building multiple data sources and bringing them together, make sure that they're at the appropriate grain level. Now, what does that mean? You're not going to quote unquote join summary information with itemized or detailed information. You don't want to put that all in one data set. It won't make sense, right? So make sure that it's all at the item level or at the detail level or at the summary level. At whatever it makes sense, it's got to be at the same level or the same grain. That's the term that's often used out there. So some of the tips you may see out there is, if you're looking at all these different objects that are out there, right? How many data sets would you typically need for these type of objects? Well, the answer is depends, right? You could create for each of these circles, possibly 4, possibly more. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Now, think of a project, and I'm using the term in general project, as leveraging a data set for more than just one dashboard, right? If you're designing your data appropriately, and this is database 101, if you will, you're going to be leveraging data sets across multiple dashboards. So just keep that in mind, that the way you will structure things it usually shouldn't be just for one specific use case. What is a data flow? So understanding the concept of creating steps, right, instructions that you're telling Salesforce to do to, in the end, build an appropriate data set that you're interested in. We talked earlier about data prep and recipes. So not only can you bring the information in, but then you can tweak that information, build additional columns that you may not have in the original data, so that you can leverage that information in your dashboards. As promised, we're at the end of section 1. Here is the slide I want everyone to print out, throw on your desktop, and click every single link that's here. These are links within the subsections of section 1 that are information that will be critical, questions that will be found on the exam. So please read every single one of these links. Section 2, security. The majority of this is going to be around role-based security. So understand the concept of role-based security as well as security predicates. Those are the two big things you want to be focused on. So understanding the concept of sharing inheritance and security predicates, when one trips another, and so on and so forth. There's a link on the bottom that is critical there that I want you to read. To understand the concept of sharing inheritance, which simply means you're bringing the security information in from Salesforce. Here's some examples of security predicates. Now, these predicates live on the data set side. So when you generate a data set, there's an ability right there at that level to put a security predicate. In effect, it's a filter. It's a where clause. It's where you're saying, for example, in any of these cases, where the owner ID equals the user who's logged in. Right? That's a perfect example. So you can imagine if you have a data set that has certain data, wouldn't it be great to say, well, if I logged in, then only Nick can see Nick's records, right? Perfect example of that. So read that link on the bottom there. That was a quick section because it's a minor section, but these links right here are critical. Please click on those links to get much more information. Section 3, the lion's share of administration is going to be around metadata, understanding the structure of the metadata, and improving performance of dashboards. Very important, especially when you start growing the data set row sizes. So the concept of Einstein analytics, you don't need to know the depth of this slide, so don't get scared about the slide. But I think one of the things you just need to understand is the flow of data, right? And the flow of the process. So with the query engine inside Einstein Analytics, that query engine is going to leverage data sets. You can pull that information in from, again, we talked earlier, ETL tools, whatever it might be. That's going to push information through administration and governance, through security, and then finally the visualization layer is the final layer for dashboards. To set up analytics, even though this sounds like a very simple concept, this might be a question in the exam. Understand where to go to set up analytics. Permission sets, understand the concept of permission sets. Now, you do not need to know every single permission type for the exam, but you do need to understand what some of the permission sets and permission licenses do and what they don't do. So understand the groupings and the logic and the concept of a permission set. So that would be good if you're an admin cert, or have an admin cert, you understand the concept of a permission set. So integration permissions, right, is important there. So there's certain things that are available out there for a given user. The integration user profile, right, important to understand about that. Moving information, moving dashboards from one org to another. Right, there might be a question in the exam around that, but more importantly, I put this in here because often this comes up as a general question, kind of a use case question. So I put an article out here that should get more information around that, and a YouTube video. Designing a dashboard. So we talked earlier about how do I be concerned about the load time, right, of a dashboard. You can imagine as you put things on a dashboard, you can weigh it down. Right? So one of the things I use all the time are pages. Pages are a quick and easy way to say, you know what, I still want to have everything on a dashboard, but wouldn't it be great to have buttons that control only certain things that show up at a time? So it looks like separate dashboards, but in effect what you're doing is every time you're clicking on the appropriate link, at that time those widgets will then appear and load the data. And that, by the way, that topic will also come up in the dashboard design section. Dataset fields in XMD, you can still download the XMD file, right, JSON file to change things there. Little by little, you're seeing a lot of that changing happening in the UI. We'll show you that screen share in a moment. But two different ways that you can do that, right? So there's a lot of different options out there. Right here, the fields link that's in the lens is something where you can change a number of the different formatting options that you may have out there. So you can leverage that in XMD from really two different ways. And you're going to see more and more of that, leaving the concept of going into JSON and then moving more towards a UI perspective. You're seeing that with the data prep as well. So for section 3, admin, here's the appropriate links that you want to jump in for that section. All right, halfway through. Section 4 now. The majority of this is going to talk about design principles and best practices. I often talk about this and implementation in the same breath, but I did break it out into section 4, section 5. And we talk. There's a little bit about templated apps that you might need to just pick up and understand a little bit more. So the Analytics Studio, everybody should be familiar with the Analytics Studio. If not, you definitely want to do the trailheads first to get an understanding of the benefits of the studio. All the different moving parts that are in the studio, we'll kind of zoom through most of this, but to create an app, very simple to do. You can add access right there at the app level. Within the lens itself, the Explorer, we already mentioned the fields on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, various buttons that can change the chart or the graphs or the formatting. All those different types of things are all there. It's a great. The Studio is a great tool to be able to design your dashboard. 3 different modes for charts. Table modes, value mode, values table, compare table, and pivot table. There'll definitely be some questions on the compare table, so beware of limitations or benefits, I would say, and limitations of the compare table. That's something that will come up, and you'll see the links at the end that will point to specific things there. SAQL mode, right? You want to get into SAQL. Very easy to do that there, and this is a great way to make changes here. You can then run to see what's going on. Keep in mind that if you make a change to SAQL, you may disable components of the UI because the UI depends on that code behind the scenes. It's generating it. Fields, we talked earlier about the fields, right? You're going to see more and more information from an XMD perspective here where you can kind of prep that information up front from a visual perspective, specifying formats, dimension values, things like that. Some of the basics on the left-hand side of the Analytics Studio, all sorts of widgets that you can then bring onto your dashboard to drive home what you want to display to the consumer. Now, the concern around proper designing of a dashboard. Notifications, annotations, the ability to download, and everybody says to me, geez, I see this data that's on the dashboard. I want to download that to Excel. That's been added a long time ago, right? But try to understand, that's a great concept of what are you trying to do? What are you trying to do in Excel that you're not getting on your dashboard? It's a great way to talk to your client to understand better. Maybe it's something that's a design flaw, something that you haven't thought of yet, or something that they haven't even asked about, just because they're assuming that, oh, I need to get into Excel because I'm used to that. That's a great way to ask an additional question to do some more work with them. Cloning a dashboard, I do this all the time. Once you create a dashboard that you love and you're working with inside a company and you want to have the same look and feel, don't redo everything. Just simply clone the dashboard and then gut what you need to gut and then start all over again with the structure that you have there. Links are another way, right, that you can link dashboard to dashboard to dashboard. Another way to break up logical components so that you don't have to load everything all into one. Configuring actions. Now, this is one of the key things, huge benefits of Einstein Analytics embedded within Salesforce. Okay, you actually turn this on at the data set level, and you can take advantage of all the great things that Salesforce has to offer directly inside the dashboard. If you're not doing this, then in a way you're treating Einstein Analytics just like any other BI tool. And I really would think about the different things, because remember what we're trying to do. We're trying to better the situation for the Salesforce user. When they're logging in, they're doing the great work they do in Sales and Service Cloud and Marketing Cloud. Wouldn't it be great that I have an embedded Einstein Analytics dashboard and they can go out to a certain record? They can post something if they choose. They can ask questions, create a task, whatever it might be, all within the Salesforce environment. Layouts, right? So with layouts, you have only so much real estate for your laptop screen or desktop screen. But what about your mobile device? What about an iPad? What about any other device that you might have? So what exists in Analytics Studio is you have at a minimum 2 different layouts that you can then create. For example, the mobile layout, it'll give you a narrower set of some real estate, and then you can create content there or simply drag existing information there because you've already created it for the laptop layout. So how to design a dashboard. Now you can, it's very easy. Before Lightning, this is the code that you had to drop there. Right now we can just simply drop the code within it. But if you want to link certain information, right, the account or the object, you can do that as well, the account, the opportunity, whatever it might be, so that the dashboard can reflect what's on the Salesforce screen. Okay, so there's some screens there. Embed on the mobile app, right? Very simple to do. We talked about that earlier, but very easy to do. It's automatically available on the mobile app, but remember, you got to take advantage of the layout. Designing the dashboard, connecting data sources. Now, I use this all the time too, because the key here is that you have multiple data sources, but let's say you have a filter on account, right? And both data sources, data sets have account. Well, by default, once you choose that filter, it's only going to change the lenses from that one data set. But you may want to have it for both. So you'll connect data sources, and what you're saying is, hey, data set 1, field 3 equals field 7 over here. And by doing that, then you'll have the filter in effect working for both. Now, caveat, data cleanliness, right, is the #1 thing. I find that all the time. Make sure that your data is clean. Trust me, you'll be frustrated. Account name could be spelled 15 different ways. And if you don't clean that data up front, then your filters, the people selecting the filter will be missing certain things. So beware of that. That is critical. But connect data sources is a great way to be able to connect data sources, just like you naturally would do with the filter into one data set. We already talked about pages, so let's skip through that. Trend in analytics. I love this. I don't think enough people do this. When I talk to clients and they love their reports and dashboards, and I know partners love the reports and dashboards, they don't want to leave it because they're comfortable, they know what they're doing, they control their world. But if they own an analytics license, one thing they can do is they can click on the button that says trend. And what trend does, the little green button you see right there on the lower middle, that will show up on every report and dashboard report for that user. They click on that, and what will happen is it'll take that report and dashboard report. It will generate a query in Einstein Analytics and a dashboard, and it will schedule data to be run from that report on an ongoing basis, weekly, monthly, whatever it might be. So in effect, it's going to create a pretty basic dashboard from the data that you're already running in reports and dashboards. To me, this is the easiest way to get people started with Einstein Analytics, because now you can begin to show them what they can do with analytics from the report that they know and love. Okay, so end of section 4. Here are the key links I want everyone to go through and read. Now let's talk about implementation of these dashboards and some of the key things that are important. A lot of moving parts here, right? So understanding the visualizations, right? Using the appropriate ones. Understanding the concept of bindings, right? Understanding the concept of time series. The compare tables I mentioned earlier, right? By the way, bindings now are called interactions, so you may see that term. And then, of course, SAC will as well. They'll be going underneath the UI into the code to do something very specific. So I don't have a lot of information here, because all of this stuff is on links. But here's some of the binding information for the exam. You just simply need to understand the structure of a binding. What does it mean? What is it trying to accomplish? Okay. What is SACWL? Do you need to know how to write SACWL? No. Right now, you should need to know how to. And by the way, Pete's done a great job. I've listened to his channel on going through things like SACWL. Does a wonderful job breaking that down. For the exam, you don't need the depth of SQL, but you need to know how to read SQL, how to have a basic understanding of what you see as the query statement below. Okay, so for section 5, here's the breakdown of visualizations, bindings, time series, compare tables, and SQL. Please go into each of these. That's it for Einstein Analytics. Now we're going to talk about Einstein Discovery. 4 subsections there. The top 2 of how to properly prepare the data, right? So that's key around data sets. We talked about that earlier. And determining suggested improvements. Now, if you know anything about Discovery, the great thing about Discovery is you run it, it generates the model behind the scenes. It will surface insights that you never knew anything about the data. And then now you have the ability to tweak, right? Change things, the suggested improvements, right? Maybe you want to add some data. Maybe you want to change a filter. Maybe you want to carve out some data that doesn't make sense. Adjust the parameters. And then, of course, write back that information into Salesforce so you can show that wonderful prediction on a Salesforce page. Okay? So Discovery itself, and hopefully everyone's comfortable with Einstein Discovery. Automatic insights, right, gives you detailed explanations. Now, this doesn't, if you haven't seen this before, please watch a video, especially go through the trailheads. It'll walk you through the basics. But the explanations are great. They're not just, hey, this is a chart and this is how pretty it is. This is why this happened. For example, the reason why this is 2% higher, 2 points higher, is the state was this, and the salesperson was that, and the product was this. Those 3 things caused an increase in sales. Now that may make you, from a strategic thinker, begin to think about, what should I do? Should I dig deeper? Should I, let me try something else? Is that also affecting the numbers as well? So hopefully you can tell that Einstein Discovery is more positioned for an exec, more position for a vice president, someone in charge of a group of salespeople, right? The individual salespeople will leverage the predictions that it comes out of in their everyday life as they're working through sales and service, and they can leverage that. But to build the models up front, and I should be careful that when I said build, the system builds the models for you. You don't do that at all. You serve it up data. You serve it up what you're looking for at a high level, maximize or minimize something, and it will do the rest. So it creates stories, and literally stories is the right term, right? It's not going to give you a chart and a graph, so good luck. It's going to give you a number of charts and graphs that tell a story about your data. Some of the information you may know. Now, what's interesting, I remember showing this once to a client, and we did our thing. We got a chunk of data. We ran it through, and it took 7 minutes or not even to run. And most of it we explained to the client, and the client says, well, yeah, I've been here 17 years. I already know that. And I said, well, good. That's great. But I just found out what you knew in 7 minutes. Okay? The goal of Discovery is to unearth things that you may know, but also may not know. And hopefully trigger a way for you to dig a little deeper. Ask the next question above and beyond just what you already know in the basics. Okay, so we talked about its automated analytics, unbiased insights, right? It's a computer churning through data. It's looking at the best situation. It's looking at what's there and simply putting it out there for you to consume. Okay, we talked about that. How it currently works. There's no need for a managed package anymore. That's beyond. But as the exam was written, that may come up as a question for write back. The term write back simply meant that you're pushing information back into Salesforce so you can leverage and surface that prediction on a page. Okay, so the example might be that you'll have an Einstein Discovery prediction on the right-hand side of a given page so that a consumer who's in there doing their work can see and leverage and read the information and then drill down if they see fit. So the end of section 6, here are the appropriate links for data prep, improvements, adjusting those parameters, and of course, write back. All right. So we've gone through all 6 sections. I started with this slide. I want to end with this slide. Register for your web assessor account. Start there. That'll go into the cert. And with that, Pete, I'm going to pass it back to you.
All right, so that was really awesome content, and I want to just kind of point out, not only is this an exercise in preparation for the cert, but also an exercise in best practice. And littered throughout that entire thing, I saw a number of just really cool tips. Like one that I saw was about using UTF-8 characters as emojis, and we use them for little up and down green arrows all the time. But my first question, I saw not 1 but 2 slides of Carl and no slide of Pete.
You got to send me a slide. I'll put it in there. I promise.
You guys paid for the photo shoot.
That is true. Good point.
All right. So the real questions, actually, let's see. I've just got. I realized when the video began that I didn't have a notebook, so I've been scribbling on an envelope this whole time.
All right.
So the first thought that I had was, with how quickly the number of certified professionals is growing, and it reminds me also of whenever we see the Trailblazer community stats. It's like by the time that you save the slide and email it to whoever, by the time that you actually send out the deck, the number's already wrong because it's growing so rapidly. So I almost feel like Roman did this webinar recently about the new release. And rather than using a slide deck, he actually was just using an Einstein analytics dashboard with pages to hop through all of his content. And I'm like, that's the only way you could ever get the number to match. But it's just, it's amazing how when you made the deck, it's like we're looking to go to over 2,000 this fiscal year. We're not even halfway there, and you've already broken that number. So clearly, this is something that everybody is after. Next. I do want to also echo your comments that your knowledge of when to use record types and what is master detail will not help you on this cert like it will on every other Salesforce cert. So a lot of times when I take a cert, I'll just go in and feel like, because MVPs get a voucher where we're free certs all day long. So I don't have as much on the line. So if I think maybe, I've got a shot at the cert, I just go for it. And I find that a lot of times my knowledge of the record types will save my butt. I don't think that's ever going to be the case for an analytics cert. How do new features actually make it into the cert? So for example, Data Prep 3.0 is going to go beta now. Obviously, you're probably going to wait until it's GA before you even consider it at all. But what's the process for incorporating these new elements, and how can we as test takers, let's say somebody's watching this a year from now, how can they kind of, just compare the release notes and get a guess of, well, maybe I need to worry about this as well?
That's an awesome question. So, and timing is perfect because earlier, about 3 hours ago, I was on a call with the Trailhead group going through the exam and identifying issues that popped up. For example, bindings to interactions. Perfect, easy example, right? We got to go back in the exam, make any reference to bindings and add the word bindings in parentheses, now called interactions, or something like that, right? So every release, we have an exercise like that. Now, as far as people able to jump onto a call like that to go through, you need to be an MVP, right? So Pete, I can definitely get you involved in there, and would welcome, right, your help, because it's great to have people in there looking at different points of views. Right, I work for Salesforce. I miss a different point of view where you're out there working with a client day in and day out. Would love to see that point of view. So it's easy to get you in on that. That'll happen on a quarterly basis. And what we do is review each question, and then we highlight the ones that are concerns for either a rewrite, disposal, write up brand new ones, or just to simply make changes to some. So that's an ongoing process that we do on a release by release basis.
Yeah, and then I do want to actually talk more about the certification process. But before we did, as I go through my notes here, there's one other piece of feedback on what you were saying that really, really resonated, and I want to just echo it. When you you told the anecdote of in 7 minutes, I understood this insight that took you that you say, well, of course I know this. I've been here for 15 years. Well, on a similar note, so as a cook, I worked in a very high-end Italian restaurant for a number of years, for the last 7 years as a cook, actually. And the chef was extremely passionate about what he did. Excellent mentor as well. And he actually had a room in his basement converted into a dry aging room and spent 6 months curing his own prosciutto. And then he brought it in, and we all tasted it. And we had that moment where, like, wait a minute. This tastes exactly like the imported stuff that we buy for $25 a pound. And then the lights went on. Wait a minute, this stuff tastes exactly like the imported stuff you buy for $25 a pound. So if Einstein discovery is telling you something that you already know, then isn't that validation that it's doing its job well, and you should dig into the other things it has to tell you that you may not have already known.
Yep. So let me jump in on that. Let me answer that, because that's key. It's critical, of course, that you approach a client the right way, right? Now, if I approach them like, well, you've been at 15 years, I did this in 7 minutes, you're going to probably be shown the door and thrown out, right? Instead, explain that what this tool does is it mines the data and surfaces things. So I would hope, to your point, Pete, that what it found is what you realized for the past 15 years. That's great. By the way, here's some other stuff that you may have not known, and that will, if you get the right person, and that's another key, you're going to start to turn that person's wheels. Interesting. Why not? Let's try adding this. And that's, you're trying to discover, which is the whole point of the product, right? So I just want to, so you're right on. It's the way you approach it is the most important thing.
Yeah, I agreed. And yeah, it's always, I'm always very cautious about how I phrase things. You never want to, I actually do a presentation on presentations for our analysts, and one of my slides is called Never Patronize. Because you may be the expert in the room, because it's literally your job to be the expert in the room, but the person sitting across the table from you, well, you know, I mean, if they were Salesforce certified, you probably wouldn't be sitting there. So don't talk down to them. Because it's just, I've done it as a noob mistake, and I regretted it, and I'm just like, never again. Right. But to go back to what we were talking about the process of incorporating new information into the cert. So I've actually been involved in very, very cursorily, but I was a beta tester for the cert. I've done exam question reviews and provided feedback in the past on things. And I was also part of a larger initiative that was a full cert reboot. And I was just amazed at the massive amount of man hours that goes into this. So I thought that, since you've been intimately involved with this before, maybe you could let the community know just how much work goes into it and what the thought process is behind that.
Yep, absolutely. So let's start back when hopefully people are listening right now, they remember the accreditation that I initiated, right? There's no way back then I knew everything there was to know about analytics. So I went out to the project managers, the product developers, the product marketing folks, anybody within Salesforce willing to listen to say, look, guys, I need to put some sort of measuring stick out there, because our sales guys are saying, who knows anything about analytics, right? Sales guys care about two things: who's been trained and who's done something. Let's be honest. Those are the only two things they care about. So my job is to surface that information easily to them, so they're going to be able to consume that. And by the way, I've created an Einstein Analytics dashboard internally that holds just that information. Now, getting off subject a bit, that accreditation exam was, if I remember correctly, 40 questions, 60 questions. We had over 600 people pass it. Number of couple iterations here and there, but I had a lot of PMs, a lot of support from everybody helping me get questions. Now, that was my 101 lesson on question creation, quiz creation. When I then converted, and that's probably the wrong word, but I'm going to use it, converted the accreditation exam to the certification, I started with my 60 questions. Probably 10 to 15 were taken, and the 45 plus were thrown out. And then what we did is we created about 150 more, right? So the concept of a cert is, if the number of questions to answer is 60, yet a minimum you need 120. Okay, and those questions are the term we use is minimally qualified candidate, which simply means at the minimum level, whatever I decide of what the cert level is, that person has to pass that minimally level. So 68% of the questions. So do we go deep into certain things? I would argue some of the questions we did, because of course we had product management, marketing, and development go in there and really get some detailed questions. But there were a lot of questions that were just remembering questions, right? Remembering stats and whatever it might be. And we cut those out quickly because we're not trying to study, or we're not trying to test your ability to memorize things. We're studying you're trying to test the ability to be a good consultant and be able to leverage all of the benefits that you can with Einstein Analytics. So the structure is a very, very, very tough structure to follow from a trailhead perspective, which is why a lot of the trailhead, the super badges, the projects, the modules, there's a structure to that. And there are teams of people behind the scenes that force all of us to follow a certain structure so that the look and feel and the structure of the content is all congruent throughout.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And like, I remember so many times the question would be, do you really expect the minimum qualified candidate to know this?
Yeah.
And we weren't talking about, me. Do I know this? I would say, somebody who's been doing this for 6 months, and I had a list in my head of everybody I'd ever worked with, and I'd say, that guy, when he was here for 6 months, or when she was starting to build reports and dashboards, and ask myself to go to that moment in time and say, could they answer the question? And that's how we were defining minimum qualified candidate. And the whole process behind it is just really, really fascinating.
Well, so the key, I'll leave you with this. The key is, just to your point, we had a balance. We can't make the questions too hard because the people that are involved in creating the questions knew their stuff, right? They were immersed in the product. You can't make it too easy, because then if too many people passed, then the value to the sales reps and the value to the clients of being certified doesn't hold a lot of water. So there's that careful line that goes back and forth about what's needed, and that's why it's so critical to become certified today.
Yeah, so I have one last question for you, and this one I'm pretty sure I know the answer to it, but it's really just something that comes up a lot. With the acquisition of Tableau, while it was very clear through the messaging at the time, when you hear messaging like, there's the acquisition of MuleSoft, and a week later you're seeing Bling for Integration Cloud, but with Tableau, it was messaged that they were very much going to remain separate as entities that were going to coexist. But at the same time, it seems if that thing was parked in my driveway, I'd want to know what was under the hood. It's natural, it would be a miss not to look for it. And we're starting to see little glimmers of this with Prediction Builder or predictions showing up on Tableau dashboards. I'm really curious if we're going to get some sort of integration and better overlap of connectors. But we have to wait to find out. So my question is, what do you anticipate? How will this impact the cert in the short term? Do you think there'll be a long-term impact? And just any other comments you have on that piece of it?
Yeah, great, excellent question. So, first of all, love the acquisition because we have the #1 business intelligence tool, along with the #1 Salesforce analytics tool, together all under one, right? So I think that's awesome. Now, we go to market, and hopefully everybody's clear on the go-to-market for the two products, right? Whereas and it's purely a use case, it has nothing to do with data. It's purely a use case. If a given user logs into Salesforce and they want to leverage a dashboard, they should be using Einstein Analytics, period. Else Tableau. Let me say it a different way. Every single user and every company should own a Tableau license. In addition to that, for those users who log into Salesforce, they should also own Einstein Analytics. So a different way to say it, and it depends on where you're coming from. If you know Tableau well, if you know Einstein Analytics well, you know Salesforce well. Notice I didn't mention anything about the data. Don't care, right? Now, naturally, if you're pulling in Einstein Analytics, Salesforce data primarily, and you're consuming it within Salesforce, Einstein Analytics. But if you're consuming Salesforce data external to Salesforce, that's Tableau. The connectors are there. Okay, so let's be clear of that, right? There's an overlap because they're both dashboarding tools, dashboarding solutions, but they're going after hugely different markets. Remember, before we acquired Tableau, we were going after Salesforce-only clients, 175,000 clients worldwide. Now we're going after all clients, right? So that's going to open up the world for both Tableau and Einstein Analytics. So hopefully that kind of level set that. Now, from a certification perspective, they are going to be kept separate. The Einstein Analytics cert is unique. It's going to be continue to run as it is. The Tableau cert will continue. Actually, they're in the midst of recreating their kind of partner organization, or partner, I should say that the certification. So right now, I think new partners into the program is kind of on hold right now, but there's a lot of Einstein Analytics partners and Salesforce partners who want to become Tableau partners. Great, add to that. And Tableau partners who want to become Salesforce partners for Einstein Analytics. We have been doing a number of different shows, webinars on training Tableau, training Tableau for EA partners and training EA for Tableau partners. Those are all recorded. Those are on the partner community for Salesforce partners. And those recordings also reside on Sales Insights, which is kind of like the partner community for Tableau partners. So we'll continue to do that. Things that you'll cut across, Einstein Discovery, a la predictions, right? Pete, you mentioned earlier, predictions is something that, yes, will eventually, and they're working on that right now, be added to a Tableau dashboard. That's one of the key things that Tableau loves about Salesforce is now we can take the Einstein predictions, or soon, and drop them onto a Tableau dashboard where Tableau sits inside or outside of Salesforce. Okay, and one last thing, there was a mention of a Lightning web component that was launched for Tableau, so that you can drop Tableau dashboards easily into Salesforce. Now that may be a little counterintuitive about what I said earlier, but there's a lot of clients out there who love Tableau, who want to continue to leverage their investment in Tableau, and if they want Tableau inside Salesforce, hey, we'll support them as well. We're not saying go away from that, but we're giving some clear lines of where we're going to do. Both products are strong. They'll continue to grow, and we'll just continue to drive certs.
Yeah, and I really agree with. It ties back to what you said earlier. Identify the right use case. Other things that I typically think about is, and I love the way that how you described that. If you're not using the action framework, you're doing it wrong. If that's something that you want to leverage, well, right there, you're in an embedded context. You want to take actions on records. Analytics is going to better support you for that. Another one that I typically throw in is that for on-prem Tableau tends to perform a little better. There is dataset utils.
Sure.
I have a love-hate relationship with dataset utils that definitely lands on the love side in most cases, but other than that, for on-prem, you're looking at middleware. So Tableau could be more cost-effective from an integrations perspective. Although there's always APIs, there's a variety of middleware. If your shop already has MuleSoft, great. Letting them play in their own space and play adjacent is really the right messaging for this. So I 1000% agree with you.
Yeah. Bottom line, we want to give clients the options to interrogate their data. Right? I mean, please do that. We're not going to shut the options down. We're opening up. So to your point, on-prem, if you have trouble moving your data to the cloud and you're happy with on-prem, let's leverage Tableau for that. Wonderful. Right? It's what they do. Right? So we work very closely with the Tableau group. We have weekly calls with them to make sure that we're in lockstep and that we're sharing information, and you'll continue to see that going forward.
All right, so that's, I think, about all we have for tonight. Nick, I want to thank you very much for coming out, and if anybody has any questions, please post them on the community. And well, again, Nick does do, most of his time in the partner community. He always responds to messages in the customer Trailblazer community as well. And again, if you got any questions for me, obviously you're here, you know how to find me. That's all I've got for tonight. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching.